Oh my God, networking. I don't want to talk to anyone.
Hello and welcome back to the She Leads the Way podcast. I'm your host, Nicki Bedford, and on today's episode, we're going to talk about the importance of networking. I just came back from New York a couple of days ago, and while I was there, I was thrown into so many environments where I needed to network. And I realized just how much of an impact networking makes, both on leveling up in business and also for your personal life. Networking is such an important tool that you should ingrain in your day-to-day life. And when you think about it, it's not just about handing out business cards. Networking is a way to create a support network that helps you propel towards your dreams. It's funny because when you think about networking, or if I was to say networking is really important, there are two types of responses from people. On one hand, you have people saying, oh my gosh, networking, I totally get it. It's important. And then on the other hand, you have people saying, oh my God, networking, I don't want to talk to anyone. And I totally get it. I get both sides. In fact, when I first started out, I was very much the latter. But I know now just how important it is. The biggest part of is the fear of rejection, and putting yourself out there. And so we're going to tackle some of those barriers today, and we're going to cover three key areas. The first is the network mindset. The second is how networking helped me, as well as I'll give you some examples. And then the third is the do's and don'ts of networking. So number one, the networking mindset. So a lot of people think networking, you think industry event, right? Well, actually, networking should be a mindset where you're constantly thinking to yourself, how can I help this person? Or how can I help this people? Or how can I help? And if no one tells you, then ask them. Networking isn't just about going to a conference and handing out your business cards. You can be networking on the bus. You could be networking in the Starbucks line, naturally at trade events or at business meetings or at work. But networking is really a part of your day-to-day life. It's about being open to having conversations with people and building meaningful connections. And by getting used to this and doing it effectively, it really opens you up to building out better support networks and groups of people that can help you. And in turn, you'll obviously help them as well. The most important thing when it comes to networking is to cultivate a genuine and giving mindset. It is less about you and more about how you can help them. Because when you're helping other people, it always comes back to you in the end as well. But it also takes the pressure off you as well. If you're interacting with someone and you're genuinely wanting to figure out or uncover areas that you can help or areas that you're able to introduce them to other people, then that will help you build your network. So being a good networker means you have this ability to build really good relationships really quickly. So who do you have in your circle that you can help? Networking is almost more about them than you and how you can help the person that you're speaking with without expecting anything in return. Also, having a networking mindset allows you to build relationships and connections that will help your support network. And I get it. It's not always easy or pleasurable speaking with people, but the more that you do it and the more you put yourself out there, especially in instances that are foreign, so i.e. places that aren't conferences, you will get better at it and you'll realize that actually it's much better if you start a conversation with someone than if you didn't. You'll always have something to gain by building connections with people in networking. So now number two. So now we'll talk about how networking has helped me as well as a couple of examples. First, I'm going to acknowledge and touch on the fear that comes with networking. Oh my goodness, I had that too, especially at the beginning of my career when I was thrown into so many networking environments. It was a part of my job coming from a sales background. And I remember I would have to go to trade shows and my bosses would tell me, you need to make, 10 contacts and 10 business cards. So for me, I was so concerned with just taking the business card than what connection I would be building with that person. I was too worried about taking their business card and then running. And I realize now that the energy that I would have been giving would have been just so haphazard and alert that it really wasn't very effective whatsoever. For me, it's really important that when I'm uncomfortable with something, I like to do it over and over and over again until I get better at it. For example, interviews. When I first interviewed at the beginning of my career, I was so nervous. I would be in the interview shaking like a leaf. I would be nervous and I would leave the interview thinking, I haven't got all my points across. I don't feel like I conveyed what I wanted to convey. And it was just because all of my nerves took over. And I feel like that's very similar to networking. And so with interviewing, I went to interview, and I actually started to enjoy the process. And then with networking, I did the same thing. Rather than being freaked out and stressed by approaching people, I would take a much more tactical approach. I would think, okay, it's actually less about me. How can I go into this and listen to the other person? What do they need to gain out of this? How can I help them? And I feel when approaching people as well, once you start doing that, it'll become second nature. It's not that scary. I also acknowledge that having come from a sales background, it would be less scary for me to do than if you were a little bit more introverted, and have a little bit more fear around meeting people. But the more you do anything, the more comfortable you will get at doing it. So I just encourage you to try and put yourself out there. When putting yourself out there, it doesn't, it could be, you could even start with saying hello to people or acknowledging people in a more forward way in the elevator, or, asking people something in the line at Starbucks, trying small interactions with people before, you're not going to have a full-blown conversation with everyone, but it's getting comfortable with that level of uncomfortable nature and see what comes out of it. So that's exactly what I did as well. At the beginning of my career, I threw myself into these uncomfortable scenarios, and it absolutely paid off. I'll talk about some of my successes when it's come to networking. And I guess one of the biggest successes is one of my recent ones. Through networking, I was able to secure our global partnership with Power Up for She Leads the Way, which is super exciting. And that came about through networking. I had actually gone to London. I was pitching for investment, and I'd actually met an investor who then put me in touch with someone from Australia, who then put me in touch with someone from New York. And then based on that conversation and that interaction, we had a few meetings, and we realized that there was just such a great opportunity for us to work and connect with each other and do business together. So that was very, very exciting. But it was only because of the networking aspect. So for me, when I'm meeting people, I always try and ask for 1 to 2 referrals of people that I can be introduced to. Referrals are 60% more likely to convert into a meeting, because there is more trust when someone is referring you. And so for me, I always ask, if I'm speaking to someone, is there anyone else that you think I should be speaking to? Or is there someone that you can recommend that could help me with X, Y, and Z? And similarly, I always ask, is there any way that I can support you? Do you need help connecting with anyone? And making sure that it's two-way really helps build on that relationship that you have. And it also builds trust as well. It's not all about you. It's all about us. Also, when I first started She Leads the Way 5 months ago, I went into it pretty quickly. I made a decision, She Leads the Way, let's go. And so the first step was ensuring that I had people to interview. And so I was going to 2 to 3 networking events every single week so that I could source my guests. And so the first 2 months worth of content were actually guests that I found at networking events. And then through those guests, I was referred to other guests, and then it sort of continued to build from there. And now I have people calling in asking to be a part of the show, which is really exciting. Online networking is also incredibly important. So platforms like LinkedIn. I remember back in the day, it was so much easier to get a response. You'd literally message them and say, hey, this is what I have, let's chat. And it would be much easier to secure a meeting. It's really not like that anymore. The best way of securing a meeting or getting introduced to someone is by referral. So the better your support network is, the easier it is for you to call on a favor or call on a friend or be further introduced. So making sure that that is a space that you're spending a lot of your time is really important. When approaching people on LinkedIn, it's not as easy anymore. I remember back in the day, you could genuinely send someone a message and be like, hey, I feel like we should connect and catch up. Are you available next week? It is so much more saturated these days. It's just not as easy. And so my advice, if you are looking to build your network on LinkedIn, is be really, really specific. If you're sending someone a direct message, make sure you research their page.
And then when you're sending something, reference something on their page that perhaps you align with, or maybe you've got some mutual connections. Maybe ask some of the mutual connections if they can do an introduction for you. But otherwise, if you're sending a note, make sure that it's short and concise. And there's always a call to action, like, are you available next week, Thursday at 3:30 for a quick chat? I feel like this is what has helped me the most. But what's helped even more is being able to have that referral to lean on. And if you have a big support network and you're good at building out relationships, you shouldn't have a problem in this department, being able to find someone and call on someone. So for me, if I think about the best ways that have helped me with networking, it's in two buckets. The first is opportunistic networking. This is when we're not just at a trade show where people are expected to exchange details. This is more in a coffee shop. This is more at work. This is more through friends. This is more your current network that you already have. Who can you leverage in your current network? I always find that if it's in a more genuine, authentic setting, it's much easier to derive new connections from that. And then the other, which is deliberate networking, and this is when you're in scenarios of, those conferences or trade shows where the reason why you're there is to network. So it's being able to incorporate both of those in your everyday life that will help you build out your network. Okay, so now we're going to be talking about networking do's and don'ts. And the first one is to have a clear elevator pitch. It is really important that you land the plane verbally within the first 15 seconds of meeting someone if you're at a trade show, conference, etc. But also this is the same if you're sending something via LinkedIn. If people don't know or why you're reaching out and you don't capture people's attention really, really quickly, you're a goner. No one cares. So you've got to do that really quickly. So I'll give you mine. So mine would be, hi, I'm Nicki, the founder of She Leads the Way. We are a media company and podcast for women in business and women trailblazers across the globe. We have an educational marketplace that helps women who want to be entrepreneurs create their own companies. And our podcast celebrates the journeys of business leaders and female founders, as well as women trailblazers. I'm looking to be connected to inspiring female founders. Is there anyone that you have in mind that you could connect me to? So this is short, sweet, to the point, and I'm also asking a question at the end as well. After they answer, then also I would ask, is there anyone that I can connect you to? Is there any way that I can support you? Or what is the biggest challenge you're looking to achieve? What is your biggest challenge right now? How can I help? Making sure that there's that two-way is super, super important. So the second is your follow-up. This is really important as it's attached to your personal brand. If you don't follow up, people will notice. You can't then reach out to them in a month or so and be like, hey, remember I saw you at the event. With your follow-up, it's also important that if you said that if you wanted to meet, you can follow up with a calendar invite with a time and say, we had a great conversation. I know that we said that we'd catch up. Are you available next Wednesday at 3:30? To reconnect. If it was slightly colder and you weren't able to expand on the conversation, then based on what you were able to talk about, I would send something, a link or something, a piece of information that referenced some part of the conversation to make your follow-up more personal. It also will increase the chances of them actually responding. So it could be if they were talking to you about, AI, which everyone is talking about right now, find a link to a really interesting piece of information and flick it to them with the follow-up and say, hey, I just saw this today, thought of you, looking forward to catching up. Let me know if X, Y, and Z works for you. That could be a good way of getting back in touch. And if you said that you were going to give them information or a contact or an introduction, make sure you do that and then send them an email and say, I've just introduced you, look forward to whatever. Let me know if you want to catch up again next week or whatever the follow-up was going to be. But making sure that you do what you say you're going to do helps really build that trust in the new relationship that you're going to build with them. 3 is be genuine, be your genuine self. Sometimes I know firsthand when I first started, I know that I wasn't genuine because my end goal was getting those damn business cards. So I wasn't even thinking about the person. I was thinking like, pass the damn card. you'll never build connections that want to help you if you're not genuine. So make sure you remember why you're there, which is to help the people around you, to build out that network. It's not just a one and done. It is a long lasting partnership potentially. So be genuine and make sure that you're actively listening and you are on your way to building connection. Set clear goals. This is really important because sometimes when you go to an event, you get a little overwhelmed and you think, oh, like, why? But if you know to yourself, okay, 5 people, I want to have 5 genuine interactions with people, then go in with 5 genuine interactions. I want to walk away with, do your research. Do you know who is going to be there? If you know exactly who you want to speak to, make sure that you're researching those people so that you know exactly what you can talk about when you speak to them. But otherwise, who is it that can help you reach your goals and how are you able to help them? But make sure that you're setting clear goals when you're going into it. Otherwise, it's so much easier to be like, I'm just going to be at the bar. I'm just going to give myself a quick little mimosa before we go into this, and then you'll never end up speaking to anyone. Listen actively. This is sort of comes hand in hand with be genuine, but this one's a really important one because when you're meeting people, sometimes you're like, I really need to get out what I want to say. But actually, you just need to make sure that you're giving that respect to the person that you're speaking to and you're listening very actively, asking questions, showing that genuine interest. I know it sounds obvious, but that is really, really important. I know for me, when I first started out, I wasn't listening. I was thinking about the next thing I wanted to say, and that got me absolutely nowhere. So by listening actively, that'll help you build out that network. Boom. And build a diverse network. Sometimes you might speak to someone and you might be like, there is never I don't care. And that is not the right attitude to have. It's really important that you're able to build a diverse network. You never know who you'll need to call on in the future. And also it's a great way for you to learn about areas that you're not currently working within. So building a diverse network, make sure that that's something that you do too, or keep in mind when you're meeting new people. So the don'ts of networking, so don't be pushy or negative. Not being negative is so important. Sometimes people bond over being negative. So for example, you might be at an event and you might be talking during the break and you might think to bond with someone over putting the event down in some way, or the food, or I don't know, the seat wasn't comfortable or the speaker wasn't. Leave that at the door. Everything that you do and say is a true reflection of your brand. And that person, even if they interact with you, that will be a lasting thing that they think about. And we don't want that. You don't want to be the negative person that people think about. So keep it positive, or keep it neutral. You want to build a good connection, but leading with negativity is not the way. Don't neglect your online presence. So while you're networking, speaking with people, naturally, they're going to go and look you up, whether that be LinkedIn, your website, or anywhere else. It's really important that if you're wanting to build out that network and people understand exactly where you are at, that everything is all up to date. So making sure that everything across all platforms is nice and up to date is super important. Don't forget to follow through. So I had follow through in the do's. So don't forget it. Following through, if you say you're going to follow through, is super important. If you don't follow through, you're not going to be able to ask them in a couple of months for, any help or support. It's a reflection of you and the way that you operate. So follow through. And don't focus solely on professional gain. By building connections, it can really help you in all aspects of your life, not just being able to level up at work. So make sure that you're keeping that in mind when you're having those conversations. So that was the importance of networking. I hope it was helpful. I hope that you will now have a little bit more confidence to just get out there and build a connection with someone, not even in the traditional sense of trade shows, but go and speak to someone in a line somewhere or in a bus somewhere. Truly, the connections that you make every day will pay dividends on the network that you'll build for the future. So good luck. Let me know how you go, and let me know if you need any help or more advice. I will speak to you soon. Bye.